Ladies and gentlemen, a big, warm round of applause for Orlando Bailey. Yes. Come on, step right up. Step right up.
So my parents met in the mid-1980s on a street called Manistee, where both of their parents lived. And to their union were born 5 children. I was the third child, the middle child. Yes. I remember frolicking up and down the street with my siblings and my cousins. There was a block of so much love, so much community, so much family. It was our pride rock. I remember playing tag, running in between the tall grown-ups, playing in grandma's vacant lots that she kept activated with shrubbery, park benches, and a fence. She knew what placemaking was back in the day. I remember being so enamored and captivated by my grandmother, my maternal grandmother. And we would go from grandma's house to grandma's house. And granddaddy was there too, but it was still grandma's house. But my maternal grandmother, she was this tall, regal black woman who had beautiful skin, just moved with grace. She had a short, manicured natural when I was growing up. And she had a soft yet commanding presence. Grandma would sit at the dining room table with her reading glasses, and she would open the newspaper and she would read the newspaper. And after she was done reading her daily paper, she'd close it, and then she'd pontificate with her neighbors or family or whoever was there about the news of the day, what was happening in the White House, what was happening in Mary Young's office, what was happening at the city council table. To me, the newspaper made my grandma smart. I had this fascinating relationship with the newspaper. When I was a toddler, my mother would lay down newspaper on the floor. She'd sit me down and she'd bring out a big old bowl of mashed potatoes, and I would go to town messing up that newspaper, eating those mashed potatoes. You put a bowl of mashed potatoes in front of me to this day, I'm gonna smash these mashed potatoes, right? I'm gonna smash them. I'm gonna smash them. Because of my potato shenanigans, my uncle prophetically nicknamed me Newspapers because I would make a mess on the newspaper. I remember sometimes when my grandmother would get done reading the newspaper, I would drive over to the dining room table in my little Tykes car, and I'll get out and I'll slam that door like I was really getting out of a real car, and I climb up to her table in her chair, and I put on her reading glasses just like she did, and I open the paper, and I look at the paper, and I read the paper. I had no idea what I was seeing or looking at, but I thought my grandmother's reading glasses were magic glasses that would allow me to be able to read whatever it is that she was reading because I wanted to be smart like grandma. I couldn't read though. By the time I was in the 6th grade, I had purchased my first subscription to the Detroit Free Press. And it would come every morning before I got on the bus to school, and I'd read the newspaper on the school bus on the way to Remus Robinson Middle School. Can y'all imagine? Little 11-year-old Orlando just reading the news of the day on his way to middle school. I was enamored by the record. I was captivated by the story. I went on to Eastern Michigan University, and I studied broadcasting and journalism. And while I was there at the time, my consciousness as a Detroiter began to shift. I would often overhear folks who were not from Detroit, who was not from Pride Rock, talk about and whisper among themselves about how careful they had to be when they adventured into the city for a concert or a sporting event. I wanted to scream, well, if we're so bad, don't come. As a Black Detroiter at EMU, I often found myself feeling surveilled by white folks on campus. Even in my time in college, which was not too long ago, I could still be the only person of color in some of my classes. And I hated when Detroit came up in class. The professor would say something like, "Orlando, what do you think about what's happening in Detroit?" I want to scream. But I say something like, "Systems and policies continue to fail Detroiters." My time at EMU, Detroit was going through so much. It was experiencing the exacerbating effects of the economic recession of 2008. Our city hall was riddled with corruption probes, and toward graduation, we were headed into the largest municipal bankruptcy that this nation had ever seen. I was carrying this tension of whether or not I should return home to Pride Rock. Just like Simba in Lion King when he was hanging out with Timon and Pumbaa. Hakuna Matata, what a wonderful phrase. It means no worries for the rest of your day. I had friends who had found success in Houston and in LA and in Atlanta and New York. I'm like, well, maybe I can go there and start my life, because I had digested this false narrative that to escape Detroit meant that I was a successful person. But just like Simba, I felt called to Pride Rock. I felt called to Detroit. So I went back home to Pride Rock. I began working at this community development organization on the southeast side, right where I grew up. And one of my first assignments was to take a spreadsheet full of addresses and homeowners' names and go canvassing door to door to let these residents know that their homes were in property tax foreclosure. I knock on the door. They'd answer. I deliver the news. Some people already knew. A lot of people didn't know. I remember one resident distinctively saying, "What am I going to do? My parents left me this house. This is all I have for me and my children." I saw firsthand how bad policy can devastate cities and the people who occupy those cities. I continued working at that CDC, and I had the opportunity to work with residents who would become giant teachers of my career. A Miss Toya Watts over in Charlevoix Village, cursing me out every community meeting, and then coming up to me afterward, hugging me, say, "Love you, baby, I'll see you next time." Like, what in the world? I had the opportunity to work with the Lesters and Jefferson Chalmers and the Wells family in Chandler Park, and Miss Brenda Butler and Miss Barb Martin over in Goodstock. And these people would say things along the lines of, because I was really green, "Orlando, we know you learning, but make it snappy, because it's urgent." And at the same time, the likes of the New York Times and the Detroit Free Press and Time Magazine was telling this narrative about a city that was on the comeback. While I was in school, a different narrative was being told, a narrative of decline, a narrative of a dead city. And black folks, me, my grandmother, my community, my Pride Rock, were the personification of degradation, of decay, of dilapidation. And now we have this narrative of revitalization. Detroit is a blank slate. Come on, invest. It's gonna pay off in the long run. And who got to be the face of this revitalization? It was a white millennial face. And that was diametrically opposed to what I was seeing and who I was working with every single day. The narrative had erased Barb Martin and Toya Watts and the Wells family and the Lesters over in Jefferson Chalmers. It had erased my grandmother. A community, a pride that coalesced and kept their communities thriving, kept their communities going. When the city couldn't provide services, they did. When the lots weren't being mowed, they cut the grass. When the house was open and vacant, they boarded it up. So while we are experiencing this comeback, Pride Rock was fighting erasure. I innately knew that I had to do something about that. So I did. I provide the opportunity for Black folks to be on the record. I provide platforms for our folks to display their power and their expertise, whether it's through Bridge Detroit, the Urban Consulate, the Authentically Detroit podcast, or Detroit Public Television. I am an advocate for our stories. I am an advocate that everybody can be a journalist. Let something go down to my family. My aunties and cousins are some of the best investigative reporters you will ever meet in your life. Did you hear about? Let me investigate. Let me call you back. I'm going to get the story straight. There is power in documenting the observation. There is power in documenting the observation. Kings and queens and people in society that we esteem carefully have their lineage, their families, their lives documented. My grandmother, the mother of 3, 83 years old, deserves and is worthy of the record. Detroit, Pride Rock, my community is worthy to have our experiences, our lineage, our culture on the record. My grandmother, who sits in the king's chair of my Pride Rock, is worthy of the record. So, for the record, I am encouraging each and every one of you to document the observation. Put grandma on video. Record grandma's voice. Explore and research who you are and where you come from. Because one day, it's going to be a young, fly dude like myself trying to find himself. And he will, because you all would have provided the record in an era where there is an outright campaign to erase us, in an era where mass dementia is upon us. We have to make it impossible for our Pride Rock to be erased. Thank you.
Yes! Orlando, baby!